morning, welcome back.
Vítam vás späť, dobré ráno.
I would like to switch a little topics this morning
Trošku prejdem dnes na inú tému,
in regard to a question I received yesterday.
Týkajúcu sa otázok, ktoré ste včera položili.
In regard to the different groups that we find at the end of the world among God's people.
Ohľadne rôznych skupín, ktoré nachádzame v rámci Božieho ľudu.
We know, we understand, in the past we understood that there are two groups of people.
V minulosti sme rozumeli, že sú dve skupiny.
You have God's people in the Adventist church, God's people among God's people.
Boží ľud v rámci adventizmu, teda Boží ľud v Božom ľude.
And you have God's people in the other churches.
A Boží ľud v iných cirkvách a vo svete.
And God's people as the Adventists have the work to do to call the other people, also God's people, but still in the other churches, to join them into the full truth.
A Boží ľud v rámci Božieho ľudu, teda v rámci adventizmu, majú to dielo alebo tú úlohu povolávať ostatný Boží ľud zo sveta alebo z tých cirkví, aby sa ďalej vyšli.
We always illustrated this in a certain way, just very simple.
Veľmi jednodušene sme to ilustrovali.
You have the SDA Church, God's people,
SDA Boží ľud,
and the people in, I would call it the world now, maybe it's not
nazvem to svet, tí ostatní.
Not the right word to use, but God's people in the other churches.
A tam je zasa Boží ľud spomedzi tých ostatných cirkví.
But we also understand that God's people with God's dealing with His people is ever the same.
Tiež rozumieme tomu, že Boh robí s ľuďmi vždy rovnako.
So if He deals with the world to judge the world here at the end of the world, if this is the close of probation.
Ak toto je záver milosti.
We know from the Bible, from 1 Peter 4:17, that He judges God's people first.
My vieme z 1. Petrovej 4:17, že Boží ľud je najprv súdený.
Ezekiel 9.
Alebo Ezechiela 9.
When the angel of judgment comes down to judge the people.
Kedy vlastne zostupuje ten anjel, aby súdil ľud.
He starts with the ancient men at the temple.
Tak začal vlastne s tými starcami, ktorí boli vo svätyni.
And then he goes from the temple into the cities to judge all the rest of the people.
A potom z chrámu išiel ďalej do tých ostatných miest súdiť zbytok ľudu.
So you can see this illustration that he starts with the church and then moves to the rest.
Vidíme tu na tú ilustráciu, že začína s cirkvou a potom prechádza k tým ostatným.
And we get it from other verses as well, but it's so God judges His people first.
Boh vždy najprv súdi svoj ľud.
So we started to recognize, and this is basically maybe the oldest principle in our movement.
A toto je jeden z najstarších princípov v našom hnutí.
That Seventh-day Adventists, the close of probation for Seventh-day Adventists is at the Sunday law.
Že záver milosti pri adventistov je pri nedeľnom zákone.
That's something that is, I think, just as old as our movement is.
To je niečo tak staré asi ako celé toto hnutie.
So we could say this is the Sunday law.
Tak ako toto je nedeľný zákon.
This is where Seventh-day Adventists close their probation.
Tu si adventisti zatvárajú svoju milosť.
And here we have the close of probation for the world.
A tu je záver milosti pre svet.
So we have two groups.
Máme dve
That's where I
skupiny.
actually wanted to go. We have two groups.
Takže s tým by som začal. Máme dve
And this
skupiny.
group calls the other group.
A táto skupina volá tú ďalšiu skupinu.
That's the work. That's the whole purpose of this group, to warn the world and to save God's people in the world out of the world from Babylon.
To je vlastne dielo toho Božieho ľudu, alebo ich úloha, aby varovali svet a aby volali Boží ľud von zo sveta.
But as we continued in our development of studying the Bible in the recent years,
Ako sme pokračovali ďalej v štúdiu Biblie aj vlastne za posledné roky,
we started, and I think that became clear for us when Ezra 7:9 was started to open up in 2014.
toto sa nám vlastne rozjasnilo, keď Ezraš 7:9 bol otvorený v 2014.
That this group which we call one group,
že táto skupina, ktorá je vlastne ako jeden celok,
consists actually also out of two groups.
vlastne tiež pozostáva z dvoch.
And could someone tell me, or does someone know, how do we get to this idea? I said Ezra 7:9. How does Ezra 7:9 lead to this?
Viete vy, alebo počuli ste, ako vlastne cez Ezdraša 7.9 sme prišli k týmto dvom skupinám?
7:9?
Not from 7.9.
No, not from the verse 7:9, but the whole study of Ezra 7:9.
Zo štúdia o Ezdrašovi, nie len z toho verša 7.9, ale celá štúdia Ezdraša. Povedz.
Nevím, kolikace to je, jak oni jdou z Babylona a nejsou tam Levité. A on dává druhé volání pro Levity.
When they leave Babylon, there's none of the sons of Levites, and they go back and call Levites.
Yeah, so you have a group that leaves to Babylon. Ezra is among them. Ezra is a priest. He's among this group of people.
Takže Ezdraš je ako kňaz, and he was a priest.
Ezra is a priest.
Ezdraš bol kňaz.
And this group of people is sent back to call the Levites, and the Levites come.
Keď zistia, že nie sú medzi nimi Leviti, tak sa vlastne vrátia a oni volajú Levitov, aby vyšli z Babylona.
Is there another way of how Ezra, maybe not necessarily the story of Ezra, but how the study of Ezra leads into an understanding of these two groups? This is one way.
Ešte vidíme inde, ako štúdia, alebo to vlastne, čo sme študovali v Ezdrašovi, ako vedie k porozumeniu dvoch skupín.
Ja to mám v druhé Paralipomenon 29.
Second Chronicles.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking about. Yeah, Second Chronicles 29.
I was thinking, because through Ezra we get 120 and 70, and that's 12 and 70 disciples.
Yeah, also, yeah, so you have these two groups of disciples going to the Jews.
Ja som ešte hovorila, že vlastne Ezraž nám rozdelil, tým polnočným volaním nám rozdelil vlastne na 120 a 70 a to vlastne ukazoval na 12 učeníkov a 70 učeníkov.
So we came through Ezra 7:9. We came to the understanding that there is or we might have had the waymark already. The waymark of the midnight cry. I think through Ezra 7:9 we came to the understanding of this waymark of the midnight cry. No?
I think we had it before.
Oh, we had it before.
I think we just didn't have all the details.
Yeah, okay, so it added to the waymark. Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
Takže Ezraš 7.9 vlastne nám dal veľa detailov o tom milníku polnočného volania.
The study of Ezra opened up that this is the first day of the first month, and the midnight cry lines up with the first day of the fifth month.
Ezraš nám ukázal, že 9.11 je v línii s prvý deň prvého mesiaca a polnočné volanie prvý deň 5. mesiaca.
The way you illustrated this is that this is 120 days.
A to je vlastne odtiaľ potiaľ je 120 dní.
And here, if you continue, the Sunday law lines up with October 22nd.
A nedeľný zákon zasa je v línii s 22. oktobrom.
If this would be the line of the Millerites,
keď toto použijem ako líniu Mileritov,
then this would be October 22nd, 1844.
Toto by bol 22. október 1844.
And that is the 10th day of the 7th month.
A to je 10. deň 7. mesiaca.
And this day lines up with the Sunday law.
To je v jednej línii s nedeľným zákonom.
So the Sunday law is symbolically the 10th day of the 7th month.
Symbolicky nedeľný zákon je 10. deň 7. mesiaca.
And that's 70 days.
To je 70 dní.
So you have a 120 and a 70.
120 a 70.
Or 12. You can make it a 120, you can argue that's a 12 and a 70.
Alebo 12 120 ako symbol môže byť aj 12 a 70.
And that creates these groups of you have these two groups of disciples that go out to evangelize to the Jewish church.
Tu máme vlastne dve skupiny učeníkov, ktorí idú a evangelizujú.
Illustrating the two groups in God's church.
Ktoré
in these two periods.
Ilustrujú dve skupiny v Božej cirkvi. Can we also read from 2 Chronicles because I don't know the Thomas.
Yeah, I just want to go there now.
Sorry.
Yeah. Then so this is one way to illustrate it.
Toto je jeden spôsob, ako sa to dá ilustrovať.
And the other way is through 2 Chronicles 29. And that
ďalší spôsob je v druhej Paralipomenom 29.
I think it's verse 15, 16, 17. So this is about this chapter is takes place in the time period of King Hezekiah.
Toto je vlastne v časti alebo o kráľovi Hezekiášovi.
And he starts to restore the temple. The temple was how do you say it? Corrupted or desolated.
Chrám bol úplne zničený a oni ho vlastne začali čistiť, opravovať.
And he wants to restore the true worship of God again.
A chce obnoviť skutočnú bohoslúžbu.
And that starts with a cleansing of the temple, and that's what this chapter is about.
A začína to vlastne s čistením chrámu a o tom je táto kapitola.
And in verse 3 you see that in the first year of his reign, in the first month, he opened the doors of the house of the Lord and repaired it.
Čítam 3. verš. On hneď prvého roku svojho kráľovania, prvého mesiaca, otvoril dvere domu Hospodinovho a opravil ich.
And he brought in, verse 4, he brought in priests and Levites and gathered them together into the east street.
A doviedol kňazov a levitov a zhromaždil ich do východnej ulice.
And if you continue down into the chapter, continue reading until verse 15.
A potom, keby sme čítali ďalej až do 15. verša. Should I read?
Yeah, 15. Okay, right?
Yeah, 15 to 17.
Maybe 15 till 17.
Takže čítam 15 až 17. A zhromaždili svojich bratov a posvetili sa. A prišli podľa rozkazu kráľovho, založeného na slovách Hospodinových, aby vyčistili dom Hospodinov. Tak vošli kňazi dovnútra do domu Hospodinovho, aby ho vyčistili a vyniesli všetku nečistotu, ktorú našli v chráme Hospodinovom, na dvor domu Hospodinovho, odkiaľ ho brali levitovia, aby to vyniesli von do potoka Kedrona. A začali posväcovať prvého dňa prvého mesiaca a 8. dňa toho istého mesiaca vošli do dvorany Hospodinovej a posväcovali dom Hospodinov za 8 dní a 16. dňa toho istého prvého mesiaca dokončili.
So you see here a twofold work.
Takže je tu taká dvojitá práca.
There's a work that is done by the priests.
Jedno robia kňazi
first,
najprv
and then by the Levites.
A potom leviti.
The priests cleansed the temple.
Kňazi čistili chrám.
And the Levites take out that which the priest find, so to speak.
A kňazi vynášajú von, leviti vynášajú von to, čo kňazi vlastne našli v tom chráme.
You can see this in two steps.
Takže sú to také dva kroky.
And in verse 17 you see these two steps again.
Vo verši 17 sa to opakuje.
And you can see here that this work starts on the first day of the first month.
Vidíme, že to dielo začína prvého dňa prvého mesiaca.
So that's what we recognize here, the first day of the first month.
To sme už rozpoznali ako na 9.11.
And I didn't explain this, but that's based on Millerite history. I'm not sure if I should go all the way back to explain it, but the first day of the first month we recognize as 9/11.
Tieto dátumy poznáme vlastne z dejín Milleritov. A to prvý deň prvého mesiaca patrí na 9.11 našej línie.
Very short. If this is Millerite history,
veľmi v skrátke skúsim. Toto sú dejiny Milleritov.
In 1798 starts.
1798.
This is the first angel's message.
Prvé anielské posolstvo.
And then they predict Jesus coming in 1843.
Predpovedali, že Ježiš príde 1843.
Jesus does not return and they're disappointed.
Ježiš sa nevrátil a oni sú sklamaní.
And then there comes a point, and this disappointment, Sister White shows in early writings that when these people were disappointed, he sends the second angel.
A sestra Whiteová hovorí, že keď bolo toto sklamanie, tak on im poslal druhého anjela.
The first angel's message, second angel's message arrives here. And this is on, the last day of 1843 or the first day of 1844.
A to vlastne, tam bol ako prelom toho dňa, že posledný deň roku 1843 a prvý deň roku 1844. Vlastne toho karaického počítania.
So April 19 is the first day of the Jewish year 1844.
Takže 19. apríl v našom kalendári je vlastne prvý deň prvého mesiaca židovského kalendára.
And this is the first day, basically they are disappointed because now the year 1843 is really over.
A tam bolo to ich sklamanie, pretože židovský rok 1843 uplynul a Ježiš neprišiel.
And Jesus sends the second angel
Ježiš poslal druhého anjela,
to comfort these people and to bring them light.
aby ich povzbudil a aby im priniesol viac svetla.
But we know that this light is unfolding progressively.
Vieme, že toto svetlo sa postupne rozvíja.
And there comes a point where they understand the light, and that's what we call in Millerite history the midnight cry.
A prišiel bod, kedy oni tomu svetlu porozumeli a to v dejinách Milleritov nazývame polnočné volanie.
So I said here April 19 is the first day of the Jewish year 1844.
Takže ja som hovoril, že 19. apríl je prvý deň prvého mesiaca židovského roku 1844.
So that's the first day of the first month.
To je prvý deň prvého mesiaca.
And the interesting thing is that when this message, when these people develop in understanding their message,
ako ľudia začínali porozumievať tomu posolstvu
and they are disappointed about the fact that Jesus did not return on the expected time,
a boli sklamaní, že Pán Ježiš sa nevrátil v tom očakávanom čase,
they still understand that they must be right, but they don't fully understand why they are disappointed.
oni stále tomu rozumeli, že musia mať pravdu, ale nerozumeli plne, že prečo sú sklamaní.
And then there's this brother Samuel Snow.
A brat Samuel Snow,
He brings in this time period a message where he understands that Jesus was not to come in 1843, but actually in 1844 on the date of October 22nd.
Samuel Snow priniesol posolstvo o tom, že vlastne Pán Ježiš nemal prísť v 1843, ale presne v tomto dátume 22. oktobra 1844.
And it is on August 15
A 15. augusta
that he brings this message at a camp meeting in Exeter,
na camp meetingu v Exetere hlásal toto posolstvo.
where he brings that message and where people understand it.
A ľudia to tam pochopili. On to hlásal už skôr, ale toto bol čas, kedy to aj ľuďom docvaklo.
And from this point onward, the Advent people go out and this is more local in America, go out to tell everybody, behold the bridegroom cometh. That's the midnight cry.
A v tomto bode adventný ľud išiel s veľkou mocou hlásať všetkým v rámci Ameriky, hľa, že nech prichádza.
The interesting thing is that this August 15, 1844 on the Jewish calendar is the first day of the 5th month.
Na židovskom kalendáre presne tento deň je vlastne prvý deň 5. mesiaca.
And October 22nd, 1844, like we said here, is the 10th day of the 7th month.
22. október 1844 je 10. deň 7. mesiaca.
But the interesting thing is, this is interesting, but it's only interesting if you can connect it with the line of Ezra.
A toto je akože zaujímavé, ale naozaj zaujímavé to je, až keď sa to prepojí s líniou Ezdraša.
This history is the final year or the last part of the prophecy of the 2300 years.
Tieto dejiny sú vlastne úplný záver proroctva 2300 večerov a rán.
And to understand where this prophecy ends, you have to understand where it begins.
Na to, aby sme rozumeli, kde končí toto proroctvo, musíme rozumieť jeho začiatku.
That was the challenge of the Millerites. Not so much about where it ends. They wanted to know where it ends, but to understand where it ends, they needed to know where does the prophecy actually begin.
To bola vlastne výzva, ktorú Milleriti mali. Na to, aby pochopili, kde to proroctvo končí, oni museli zistiť, kde sa začalo.
And the verse that they needed to understand is, or the chapter or the verse, is chapter 7 of Ezra, Ezra 7, and especially verse 9.
A oni vlastne museli porozumieť veršu Ezdraša 7.9.
So this is the year 457 BC.
Toto je rok 457 pred Kristom.
This is the first day of the first month.
Prvý deň prvého mesiaca.
And Ezra 7:9 says that Ezra leaves Babylon.
A v Ezdrašovi sa píše, že vtedy Ezdraš, maybe I should read it.
Yeah? Oh yeah, yeah. Ezra 7.
Babylon.
Read Ezra 7
Ja to
verse 9.
prečítam, Ezdraš 7.9. Where's Ezra? Just get confused. Okay. Lebo prvého dňa prvého mesiaca odišiel hore z Babylona a prvého dňa 5. mesiaca prišiel do Jeruzalema tak, ako bola dobrá ruka jeho Boha na ňom.
Yeah, so you can read here that Ezra leaves, and we know that this is the year 457, that he leaves on the first day of the first month.
Takže vidíme, že on odchádza prvý deň prvého mesiaca.
Why this is interesting in connection to this history
Dôvod, prečo je to zaujímavé v spojitosti s týmito dejinami,
is the fact that Ezra has in his hand, when he leaves, he has the third decree of King Artaxerxes.
keď Ježiš odchádza, on už má v ruke ten dekret, s ktorým ide vlastne, že sa má ďalej budovať chrám.
If I make this line a little longer,
To troška predložím.
then there is one decree, a second decree, and a third decree. So you have the king of the decree of Cyrus, of Darius, and the third decree is Artaxerxes.
Takže tuto sú dekrety Cyrus, Darius a Artaxerxes.
But the question is, and now yesterday we read that this prophecy starts when this decree goes out.
Toto proroctvo začína vtedy, keď vlastne ten dekret je vydaný.
And that marks the
Goes out, you mean?
to restore and to build Jerusalem. That's what the verse says.
But the prophecy doesn't start when the decree goes out. It starts when the decree comes to an effect.
Yeah, but the verse says it goes out. So they need to understand what does it mean to go out. I agree.
Okay, so say again what I need to translate.
The verse says in Daniel 9 that in Daniel 9 verse 25
Danielovi 9:25
says that this prophecy of the 2300 and of the 70 weeks starts when the decree to build and to restore Jerusalem. This prophecy starts when this decree goes out. I think it says.
Takže tu sa píše, že a vec a rozumej, že odkedy vyjde slovo navrátiť Izraela a vystavať Jeruzalem až po pomazaného vojvodu. Takže tu je napísané, že to proroctvo by malo začať, keď vyjde to slovo.
So the question is, first of all, which decree? Because there are 3 decrees.
Takže prvá otázka bola, ktorý dekret, lebo sú 3 dekrety.
We as Adventists understand that that's the third decree.
My ako adventisti rozumieme, že to bol ten 3. dekret.
Že boli 4 dekrety, nie?
He says there were 4 decrees.
There's actually 4 decrees. Yeah, oh yeah, you're right. There's the 4. There's also the decree with Nehemiah. I
Ešte
agree.
aj Nehemiáš je 4. dekret.
So you have 4 decrees to choose.
Takže zo 4 dekretov treba vybrať.
But we know, as Adventists, we take the third one.
My ako adventisti berieme ten 3.
Why? Actually.
Prečo? Viete prečo?
To je napsané, že on to dal Ezdrášovi, ten Artaxerxes.
Ale prečo berieme ten 4. dekret, akože, teda 3. dekret, že prečo neberieme 2., 1.
No protože je tu řečeno, že Artaxerxes to dal Ezdrášovi.
To nedáva. She says because Artaxerxes gave it to Ezra. Ale v Danielovi nemáš napísané, že dekret, ktorý Artaxerxes vydá. Že na základe Daniela, jak sme prišli k tomu, že musíme brať tretí dekret a nie prvý. Lebo slovo navrátiť vyšlo už od Círa.
All these three decrees give an order to restore Jerusalem.
Všetky tieto tri dekrety vlastne hovoria, že sa má obnoviť Jeruzalém.
Or this fourth also from Nehemiah.
Aj štvrtý.
So we have 4 decrees to pick from to say, okay, this is where the prophecy starts, because Daniel 9:25 says, when the decree goes out, this is where the prophecy starts.
Všetky tie 4 dekrety vlastne hovoria o tom, že má byť obnovený Jeruzalém a teraz my si z tých 4 musíme vybrať, lebo tu je napísané, že keď vyjde slovo navrátiť, tak vtedy začína proroctvo.
So my question is, why do we as Seventh-day Adventists, and this is just a general teaching of Seventh-day Adventists, we pick the third decree as the beginning of this prophecy?
Prečo my ako adventisti sme si vybrali práve ten tretí dekret?
Do we know why?
Viete prečo?
By to vyšlo na 2300 večer. Kdyby to nevyšlo těch 2300 večer, tak by to nebylo potvrzené proroctví.
Já myslím, že on byl nějak...
Že to musíme proroctví počítat, matematicky.
Why does it fit? I mean, this could fit as well. I mean, yeah, of course. Now afterwards, it's easy to see, but the Millerites, they were in the middle of this, and they choose this one.
Milleriti vlastne boli v tomto všetkom a oni museli vedieť, ktorý dekret vyberú ako začiatok 2300.
Or they could have taken the fourth one.
Mohli si zobrať štvrtý.
Of Nehemiah.
Od Nehemiáša.
By nepasovalo.
There's a reason why we picked the third.
Ale oni nevěděli v tu dobu, i když to studovali, tak nevěděli, ono se to studovalo ještě dřív, nežli přišel 1798.
You give your answer, then I give my
Podle
answer.
toho počítání to...
What's your answer?
Ne, on byl doplněný, tam byly ty informace doplněné v tom dekretu.
I understand because of 2 reasons, but I want you to say your reason.
No, you should go first. I'm asking you here first.
Okay. My first reason is because it says that the Jerusalem should be restored, and the way I understand restoring is not just rebuilding physically, but only under the third decree they were restored as a city. They were able to rule themselves. So that's the part of restoring, and then the second witness is the line. I mean the last week of Christ. Only if you take this decree, it fits perfectly the week of Christ, and that's something that we know in history, and that's not something that is easy to switch.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good answer. The first one is was the one I was thinking about, and we can read that in Ezra 7, a little further down in the picture.
So you say the answer and I translate.
Oh, okay. Well, she gave the answer. The answer is that I was looking for is that the third decree does not only restore the physical city, the stones.
Vlastne ten tretí dekret jediný je taký, ktorý nezabezpečuje len obnovenie fyzických budov, ako domov a budov a chrámu.
But it also restores rulership. Artaxerxes in verse 25 and 26 of chapter 7, he orders that there will be judges in the city to rule.
Ale vlastne tento dekret obnovuje aj ako keby samostatnú vládu v rámci mesta, že ľudia mohli mať svojich sudcov, svojich vládcov, boli zodpovední vlastne svojmu ľudu.
In chapter 25, verse 25 and 26.
Je to Ezdráš 7, 25-26, should I read? A ty, Ezdrášu, podľa múdrosti svojho Boha, ktorou si obdarený, ustanov vrchnostenské osoby a sudcov, ktorí by súdili všetok ľud, ktorý je za riekou. Zo všetkých tých, ktorí sú znali zákonov tvojho Boha a toho, kto by ich neznal, naučite. Ale nad každým, nech by to bol kdokoľvek, kto by nečinil zákona tvojho Boha a zákona kráľovho. Nech sa bez odkladu vykoná súd, už či by zomrel, či by bol poslaný do vyhnanstva a či by bol pokutovaný na majetku, alebo by bol zatvorený do žalára.
So here you can see that God, to put judges and to let the judgment be executed in your
Čiže
city.
vlastne tu je napísané, že im boli daní sudcovia, vrchnostenské osoby.
So they become really a nation again.
Takže oni znova sa mohli stať národom.
This is the perfect fulfillment of restoring a nation and a city.
To je vlastne dokonalé naplnenie toho obnovenia mesta.
That's why
Someone was saying you can have a city, but if you cannot rule in the city, you are still subject to someone else.
Yeah.
Ja som niekde počula k tomu, že vlastne darmo by im bolo dané mesto, darmo by tam mohli bývať, ak by stále spadali pod vládu Medoperzie. Ale im bola teraz daná samostatná vláda, čiže naozaj sa mohli obnoviť ako národ.
And another reason that Sister Monica said is that the third decree is the only decree that fits, and in such a way, in a way, he was right because it fits with the week of Christ.
A vlastne len keď použijeme dátum tohto 3. dekreta, keď ideme ďalej v tom proroctve 2300, tak jediný tento dátum pasuje na posledný týždeň Krista.
It is the beginning of the 70-week prophecy.
Pretože to je rovnako aj začiatok 70 týždňového proroctva. Tých 2300 je vlastne aj začiatok tých 70 týždňov, ktoré boli dané Židom.
So these two elements show us that the third decree is the best fitting, or the most perfect.
Čiže tieto dva dôvody máme na to, že ten tretí dekret je ten, ktorý je ten správny na začiatok výpočtu.
So that was the first part that the Millerites needed to deal with, which decree.
Takže to bola prvá časť, ktorou sa Milleriti museli zaoberať. Ktorý dekret zoberú?
But they all agreed it was the third.
Oni sa zhodli na tom, že to bude tretí dekret.
But then the next challenge is when does this third decree go into effect?
Ale ďalšia výzva bola, že kedy vlastne ten tretí dekret je vydaný, alebo kedy príde v platnosť.
Is that the day that the king sets his signature, puts his signature under the...
Je to vtedy, keď vydal vlastne ten zákon.
Is that the day that he gives the decree to Ezra?
Je to vtedy, keď mu ho dal do ruky, že môžeš ísť.
Is that the day when Ezra arrives in Jerusalem?
Je to vtedy, keď Ezraš prišiel do Jeruzalema?
Or is it the day that Ezra reads this to the people and say, this is the decree? Later in Jerusalem.
Alebo je to vtedy, keď to Ezraš číta ľudu. Kedy ten dekret vlastne sa má začať počítať, platnosť toho dekretu?
So that was the challenge of the Millerites to find out.
Toto bola výzva, ktorej oni museli čeliť.
And first they assumed it was the first day of the first month. They were not really precise in the beginning.
That was the reason of the first disappointment.
Yeah.
A vlastne to bolo aj dôvodom prvého sklamania, že oni najprv brali do úvahy ako začiatok toho dekretu prvý deň prvého mesiaca.
So this verse tells us, Ezra 7:9 tells us that Ezra leaves on the first day of the first month.
Takže Ezraš odchádza prvý deň prvého mesiaca.
And then on the first day of the fifth month, he arrives in Jerusalem.
Prvý deň 5. mesiaca príde do Jeruzalema.
And the interesting thing is this. So this is the beginning year of the 2300 years.
Toto je vlastne začínajúci rok tých 2300.
And we know that God, in many prophetic ways, we can show that God declares the end from the beginning.
A my vieme, že Boh ukazuje koniec pomocou začiatku.
And if you look to the beginning of the 2300 years and compare that with the last year of the 2300 years,
keď sa pozrieme na začiatok 2300 a porovnáme ho s tým koncom,
we suddenly started to see that this first day of the first month and first day of the fifth month, we also could find them in Millerite history.
Začali sme vidieť, že ten prvý deň prvého mesiaca a prvý deň 5. môžeme takisto vidieť v dejinách Milleritov.
This is the arrival of the second angel.
Toto je príchod druhého anjela.
And this is the empowerment of the second angel.
A toto je zmocnenie druhého.
And exactly these two dates you can find in Ezra. And so these histories of Ezra, they become symbols of the arrival of the second angel and the empowerment of the second angel.
A presne tieto vlastne dva symboly presne tieto dva dátumy nachádzame v dejinách Milleritov a oni sa stali symbolom pre príchod a zmocnenie druhého anjela.
So if you read I'm not going in there, but if you read Ezra 7 and 8, for example,
keď čítame Ezdraša 7:8,
then you see here a disappointment.
tak vidíme, že tu sa deje sklamanie
For Ezra
pre Ezdraša
here on this day, on this history, and you see a tarrying time.
a takisto je tu taký čas vyčkávania alebo predlievania.
No, these are the two things that come to my mind. And that's exactly two characteristics we recognize on April 19, 1844.
A presne tieto dve charakteristiky sú aj v apríli 19, 1844.
They were disappointed.
Boli sklamaní
And they recognized
a rozpoznali,
that they were in the tarrying time.
že sú v čase vyčkávania alebo predlievania.
And that comes from Matthew 25. But that's what they recognized.
To je z Matúša 25.
And just two characteristics. And this understanding opened a whole bunch of light.
Toto porozumenie prinieslo strašne veľa svetla.
Because we started to recognize that if you go into your Bible
Začali sme vidieť, že keď ideme do Biblie
and you look for the first day of the first month
a vyhľadáme si prvý deň prvého mesiaca
in any history, it doesn't matter,
v hociakých dejinách,
it contains characteristics that you can apply for this history.
Obsahuje to vlastnosti, ktoré vlastne sa nachádzajú v tých dejinách milenických.
There are several references in the Bible that talk about the first day of the first month.
Je viacero miest v Biblii, ktoré hovoria o prvom dni prvého mesiaca.
And then you can apply them on these lines.
A dajú sa aplikovať na túto líniu.
This is all history because this is Millerite history, but the interesting thing is
Toto sú všetko dejiny. A zaujímavé je,
that we now also live in a reform line
že my teraz žijeme v reformnej línii,
where we can see the arrival of a first angel, a second angel, a third angel.
kde vidíme príchod prvého, druhého, tretieho anjela.
This was the whole purpose of why I went this direction, to show that 9/11, I'm not going to show that 9/11 is, but we understand that 9/11 is the arrival of the second angel.
To teraz nejdem ukazovať, ale my sme tomu porozumeli tak, že 9.11 je príchod druhého anjela.
And therefore you can line up 9/11 with April 19.
A 9.11 teda je v jednej línii s 19. aprílom.
And then symbolically, it's not literally in the calendar, but symbolically you could say 9/11 is the first day of the first month because it lines up with April 19.
Symbolicky je 9.11 prvý deň prvého mesiaca.
And we already always understood that the Sunday law lines up, this is a closed door, lines up with October 22nd, where you see a closed door.
Tiež sme rozumeli, že nedeľný zákon je čas zavretých dverí pre adventistov a takisto bol aj 22. október 1844 čas zavretých dverí.
And this midnight cry lines up with the midnight cry of the Millerites.
Polnočné volanie je v jednej línii s polnočným volaním Milleritov.
And that was the first day of the fifth month.
A to spadá na prvý deň 5. mesiaca.
So all these characteristics,
Všetky tieto vlastnosti,
if you find them in the Bible,
ak ich nájdete v Biblii,
in whatever history, you can find characteristics that's what we found. You can find characteristics that apply to these waymarks.
tieto symboly, kdekoľvek ich nájdeme v Biblii, vždy nájdeme vlastnosti, ktoré vlastne sa týkajú týchto milníkov.
And 2 Chronicles 29 was one of those Bible verses.
A jedno z týchto miest bolo 2. Paralipomenom 29.
This is the chapter we just read where Hezekiah starts to cleanse the temple.
Toto je kapitola, ktorú sme čítali, keď Ezechiaš začal čistiť chrám.
We know that God is in this reform line, what we just said in our previous study, He is cleansing Adventism.
My vieme, že Boh v tejto reformnej línii čistí adventizmus.
And He started doing it on the first day of the first month, just like Hezekiah.
A začal s tým prvý deň prvého mesiaca, tak ako Ezechiaš.
Which is 9/11 for our time.
A to je 9.11 v našom čase.
And you can see that this cleansing takes place in two steps.
A my vieme, že toto sa deje v dvoch stupňoch alebo dvoch krokoch. Toto
First,
čistenie.
there is a work that's done by the priest.
Najprv je dielo, ktoré robia kňazi.
So you have,
Can I ask?
Yeah.
This two-step cleansing, does it have to do also with cleansing of the temple of Jesus? Or like two cleansings of the church?
yeah, you have this quote from Sister White where she refers to that, right?
Yeah, I know it refers to the church and the world, but if it also refers to the two groups of Adventism.
Yeah, I think you could use it for the same, just in a fractal level you could use the same quote for the same. Yeah, I mean, I can refer to that later.
Okay.
Yeah, after this.
Sorry.
No, that's good. So if we read 2 Chronicles 29,
Takže keď čítame 2. Paralipomenon 29,
you can see that this cleansing takes place, starts on the first day of the first month.
toto čistenie začína prvý deň prvého mesiaca.
And it happens in two steps.
A deje sa to v dvoch krokoch.
First, the work is done by the priest,
Najprv to dielo robia kňazi
and then by the Levites.
a potom leviti.
And then the temple is finished on the first day, the 16th day of the first month.
A potom ten chrám je dokončený 16. dňa prvého mesiaca.
What do we know the 16th day of the first month? What is that in the Bible?
Čo vieme o
Where
16.
else do we
dni?
find that?
O 16. dni prvého mesiaca, čo vieme?
Sú prvotiny vzkříšení.
She says it's first fruits, when Christ rose.
Yeah, it's the day that Christ rose. It's the day of first fruits.
Je to deň prvotín, keď Kristus vstal.
And what is first fruits a symbol of?
Čoho sú prvotiny symbolom?
Except from Christ.
Vzkříšení.
She says the resurrection.
And at the end of the world,
A na konci sveta 144,000.
the 144,000. Yeah, so in Revelation 14 verse 4 or 5, 4 I think. 114. You can see that that they are a symbol of the first fruit. They are called the first.
144,000.
Yeah, the
V
144,000.
zjavení 14 je vlastne sú prvotiny symbolom 144 000.
That's interesting in Revelation 14 verse 4, which is 144.
Píše sa to v zjavení 14.4 ako 144.
And they're called the first fruit.
A oni sú nazvaní prvotinou.
And we know the first fruits are, we know the 144,000 are those that that will stand without fault when Jesus returns.
A my vieme, že týchto 144 000 bude stáť pred Kristom bez poškvrny, keď príde.
These are those that went through the time of trouble and through all the image of the beast test.
A to sú tí, ktorí prešli cez ten čas súženia a znamenie šelmy.
So the first fruit is
Skúška znamením šelmy.
is a symbol of the Sunday law.
Tie prvotiny sú symbolom aj nedeľného zákona.
Because at the Sunday law you see this group of people being raised up.
Pretože práve pri nedeľnom zákone je to táto skupina ľudí, ktorá je pozdvihnutá
So
ako obeť k Bohu. They are raised, what's the word that we use? They are a sacrifice to God?
A wave offering or a
Yeah.
sheaf offering.
Okay.
Yeah. So the 16th day of the first month is a symbol in itself for the Sunday law in regard to because of the first fruit.
16. deň prvého mesiaca kvôli vlastne prvotinám je symbolom nedeľného zákona.
So here you can see these two steps of the cleansing of the temple.
Takže tu vidíme tieto dva kroky v čistení chrámu.
Starting on the first day of the first month.
Začínajú z prvý deň prvého mesiaca.
Or starting on 9/11.
Alebo 9.11.
And ending on at the Sunday law.
A končiac pri nedeľnom zákone.
And that brings us back in this history.
A to nás privádza späť do týchto dejín.
Where we can, or let's say here,
alebo možno sem,
then you can see that there is a group of people, the priest,
kde vidíme, že sú vlastne dve skupiny, kňazi
the Levites,
a leviti
within Adventism,
v rámci adventizmu.
and then the rest of the people in the world or in the other
A
churches.
potom je zbytok sveta.
So now we have created these, now suddenly we have 3 groups.
Takže zrazu už sme mali 3 skupiny.
And what we have understood through the years,
Čo sme porozumeli počas rokov,
that the priests are having the same function, so to speak, as the 144,000 here in this history, and that is to call the people out of their dark position.
a čo sme porozumeli počas rokov je, že vlastne kňazi majú rovnakú úlohu ako tých 144 000. Povolať vlastne Boží ľud von z temnoty,
So you
zo
have,
sveta.
so you have 144,000 that call the people out of Babylon.
Čiže máme 144 000, ktorí volajú Boží ľud von z Babylonu.
But now God is raising up a people in Adventism,
A Boh teraz zobudza ľudí v adventizme.
and before they are called to go into the world,
Predtým, ako sú povolaní, aby išli volať svet,
they need to first call God's people in the church.
najprv musia povolať Boží ľud.
Just like Jesus did and the disciples did when they were when they did their work.
Presne ako Ježiš a jeho učeníci.
In their time period,
V ich čase,
you see, when Jesus started to work in 27 AD,
Pán Ježiš začal pracovať v roku 27,
when he was baptized,
keď bol pokrstený.
he didn't do any evangelism.
On nerobil žiadnu evangelizáciu.
He only worked in his own church.
On pôsobil pre svoj vlastný zbor,
He prepared the people among the Jewish
pre svoju
people.
cirkev.
He didn't go to the Egyptians or the Babylonians.
On pripravoval si svoj vlastný ľud. On nešiel k Egypťanom, Babylončanom.
And for 3.5 years.
A to trvalo 3,5 roka.
And then he was crucified and he was resurrected.
Potom bol ukrižovaný, vzkriesený.
And then for another 3.5 years, the disciples only went to the Jews. They only did an internal work.
A ďalšieho 3,5 roka tí učeníci robili len vnútornú prácu.
And then we mark 34 AD,
Až v 34. roku,
the stoning of Stephen,
keď bol ukameňovaný
and
Štefan
the calling of Paul,
a Pavol bol povolaný,
where the truth or the message goes to the Gentiles.
keď posolstvo ide vlastne pohanom.
So you can see first a message for the church, then a message for the world.
Najprv posolstvo pre cirkev a potom posolstvo pre svet.
First a judgment for God's people, then a judgment on the world.
Najprv bol súdený Boží ľud a potom bol súdený svet.
Because God's people closed their door here on 34 AD. It's the end of the 70 weeks.
Toto je koniec tých 70 týždňov, ktoré boli dané Židom a Boží ľud si tam zavrel dvere.
And the message went to the Gentiles.
A posolstvo išlo k pohanom.
So there you can see this phenomena of first the church, then the world.
Tu vidíme ten fenomén toho najprv zbor, potom cirkev, najprv cirkev, potom svet.
And that's what we see in our history. First the church, then the world.
A to vidíme aj v našich dejinách. Najprv cirkev, potom svet.
But also, just like here in this history, you can see among God's people 2 steps.
Ale rovnako ako aj tu, medzi Božím ľudom vidíme ako keby 2 kroky alebo 2 stupne.
First, God or Jesus prepares 12 disciples.
Najprv Ježiš pripravuje 12 učeníkov,
12 disciples, and then the rest of the Jews. After the cross, you have Pentecost, and many Jews are added to the church.
a potom po vyliati letníc mnoho Židov, vyliati na letnice mnoho Židov sa pridalo k cirkvi.
So now Jesus is doing the same thing.
A Ježiš robí teraz to isté.
He's calling first priests, or call them 12 disciples,
Povoláva najprv kňazov, alebo môžeme ich nazvať 12 učeníkov,
and then he's calling the rest of Adventists
a potom zbytok adventizmu
in 2 steps.
v 2 krokoch.
And that's what we call, and when we talk about priests and Levites,
To je to, o čom hovoríme, keď vravíme kňazi a leviti.
we are only talking about people in a certain time period. So the people that are called now among God's people, we call them the priests. That's us, that's you and me.
Sorry, say the last sentence again when we catch the beginning.
When we, sometimes we can talk about priests and Levites, blah, blah, blah. When we talk about priests and Levites, we mean these two
Okay.
groups of people in these two
Možno ste niekedy zachytili termíny, že ich používame ako kňazi a leviti. Čo tým myslíme, to sú vlastne tie dve skupiny v rámci Božieho ľudu.
And us, as we sit here together, we find ourselves somewhere here before the midnight cry period.
A my vlastne sa nachádzame teraz tesne pred tým časom polnočného volania.
Prophetically, as symbolically, we call ourselves priests.
Symbolicky my sme nazvaní ako kňazi.
These are symbols
To sú symboly,
to illustrate a time period, to illustrate a group of people.
ktoré ilustrujú vlastne časové obdobie alebo skupinu ľudí.
And he calls this group of people with a certain prophetic message
A on volá svojich ľudí s určitým prorockým posolstvom,
to be able to call the Levites later on.
aby mohli volať tých levitov.
And then thereafter the people in the other churches.
A potom ľudí v ostatných cirkvách.
So this is an illustration of the three groups we have
Toto je ilustrácia troch skupín, ktoré máme.
developed through the years of studying.
Toto sme vlastne študovali počas viacerých rokov.
Now the question, how far am I?
51.
Oh, okay. Now the question, I did not answer the question because the question that I received yesterday is how do we get to 4 groups? Because we had 3 groups, right?
Takže máme tu tri skupiny a včera som dostala otázku, prečo teraz zrazu máme 4, keď sme vždycky mali 3.
These are the 3 groups.
Toto sú tie 3.
But if you take a good look to this board, you actually see 4 groups.
Ak sa pozrite dobre na túto tabulu, vidíte tam 4.
But it's not really fair, but you at least can see them by the names or by the symbols.
Myslím ako tak v tých symboloch.
You can see the priests,
To kňazi,
you have the Levites,
leviti,
the people in the world, God's people in Babylon,
ľud Boží vo svete alebo v Babylone
and 144,000.
a 144 000.
But the question is, what's the difference between 144,000 and the priests and Levites?
A teraz naskytá sa otázka, aký je rozdiel medzi 144 000 a kňazmi a levitmi.
Maybe it's good to go, are we going to study connected to this or are we going to wait until later?
I think we'll do one more. Ešte budeme mať teraz jednu, že? Spravíme jednu prednášku, či neskôr chcete.
Okay, then it's good perhaps to take a break, short now to stop, and
spravíme
then continue this.
Spravíme krátku prestávku a potom budeme pokračovať.
Okay. So then I will be proposed to pray now.
Tak poďme sa pomodliť.
Dear Heavenly Father,
Drahý nebeský Otče,
thank you for the insight you've given through your word.
ďakujeme Ti za tento náhľad do Tvojho slova.
I pray that if this is difficult to follow or discouraging perhaps,
Ja sa modlím, ak je toto ťažké nejak tak sledovať alebo niekoho toho zmalomyselňuje,
that you at least give us some little gems that we can hold on to.
aby si nám dal aspoň nejaké také malé poklady, ktorých by sme sa mohli držať.
And that we don't be discouraged by information that we don't understand.
Aby nás neodradili veci, ktorým ešte nerozumieme.
Lord, we pray that you continue to be with us this morning and afternoon,
Prosíme ťa, aby si bol naďalej s nami dnes aj po obede,
that you be with us and pour out your latter rain upon us,
aby si vylial na nás svoj neskorý dážď
that we will have a joyful time together.
a aby sme mali spolu radostný čas.
We ask this all in Jesus' name.
Prosíme ťa v mene Ježiša.
Amen.
Amen.